Welcome to How I Doctor, where we're bringing joy back to medicine. Today's episode is a little bit different, so let's dive right in and welcome our guest, me. I hear from physicians every day on shift, in DMs, texts, emails about AI in healthcare. People ask me, will it take my job? How should I be using it? How shouldn't I be using AI? And so we decided to take all these anecdotes and survey physicians to get some actual data. Offcall is releasing our biggest project yet, a confidential AI survey of over 1,000 physicians. And I'll be honest, some of these numbers stopped me in my tracks. We're used to being told by vendors, by administrators, by teams that still use fax machines what AI should be doing for us. But this survey suggests that physicians are already using AI way more than anyone realizes, and they like it way more than anyone wants to admit. Now, of course, there's some selection bias at play here. This isn't a randomized sample. We aren't double-blinded to the results. I'm always amazed at Offcall's reach, but we are certainly skewed towards online, engaged doctors. I don't think that means the data is wrong. I think it's showing the early trends that are likely to continue. Here's just a few statistics. 2 out of 3 physicians say they are using AI every single day, which means if you've ever whispered a question to ChatGPT at 3 a.m. on shift, congratulations, you're not weird, you're in the majority. But here's the twist. 81% of doctors are frustrated with how their organizations are deploying AI, which is the most physician thing ever. Yeah, I use it constantly, but it's not set up how I want to use it, which tells you everything about how physicians think versus how healthcare organizations think. So today the tables are turned. I'm on the spot. Producer Chad is here, and he's going to hit me with the most "why is this trending among physicians" AI questions. We're going to break down what doctors are actually asking me, what the data actually shows, and what this all means for the future of practicing medicine. Before we jump into the episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Evidently. Evidently is the clinical data intelligence platform built to help physicians harness the ocean of patient data they're drowning in every day. From chart summarization to AI-assisted note drafting and denial appeal support, Evidently makes sure the right data shows up at the right time. Physicians using Evidently report spending less time hunting through charts and more time focusing on patient care. That's why they've become a trusted partner to health systems looking to improve documentation, quality, and revenue sustainability. The company is led by providers and AI researchers that are dedicated to reducing documentation burden and helping clinicians practice at the top of their license. If you want to see what Evidently can do for your hospital or your practice, reach out today at www.evidently.com. Now, let's get into today's episode. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our first ever How I Doctor podcast sponsor, Abridge. Abridge is the leading AI platform that drafts structured, clinically useful notes at the point of conversation. Clinicians remain in full control because they review and finalize every note. With Abridge, many clinicians report reclaiming time and reducing their documentation burden, myself included. I've been using Abridge in my role as a practicing emergency physician in San Francisco, and clinicians who use it report up to an 86% reduction in effort writing notes, a 78% reduction in cognitive load, and 70% decrease in after-hours documentation. The company was also founded by a physician and is completely dedicated to empowering clinicians, which is what makes them the perfect first sponsor for How I Doctor. If you aren't yet using Abridge, inquire with your IT department today or reach out at abridge.com/contact. Thank you, and now let's get to today's episode.
So let's just jump into it. I think a lot of these were pretty fascinating finds to the team.
Yeah.
89% of physicians are saying they're using AI at least once a week, but
Yeah, it's like 2/3, I think 2/3 every day, and then like almost 90% at least once a week.
yeah, I mean, so that's like almost everybody is at least dabbling with it, right, at this point.
Yeah.
But only 42% are saying that they're more likely to stay in medicine because of AI, which is a topic we've been talking about for the past year on this podcast. So, does that surprise you? And do those numbers kind of feel like a disconnect?
No, they don't surprise me, and they don't feel like a disconnect, Chad. We have this term you learn in like genetics, like necessary but not sufficient. So like I kind of view the AI stuff as like it's a necessary improvement, but it's not sufficient to make the kind of work acceptable, tolerable, like enjoyable is probably the right word, like meaningful, enjoyable. There's so much stuff that AI will never be able to fix because it's not a it's not a problem that AI is going to address ever. And so that doesn't surprise me one bit. There are so many problems and challenges in practicing medicine and delivering healthcare today that I think there's plenty of things that AI can absolutely help with and will become like bread and butter stuff that we don't know how to practice without. But there will still probably always be a lot of stuff that is just not an AI problem that AI maybe just can't help with.
Yeah, and we've got some questions about this later, but you're generally in the camp that, right, that like AI is not going to replace physicians anytime soon, right?
Yeah, that's generally my take. I'm a cautious optimist that AI can tremendously help physicians with their work. I think every physician will tell you that some portion of their work could be automated, improved, simplified, because a lot of it is kind of a pattern that we see, and we do kind of the same thing over and over again. My hope is that AI helps physicians be able to spend more time understanding their patients' needs and their values and stuff, as opposed to having to spend that time collecting information about how they sprained their ankle or something like that, right?
Let's just zoom out a little bit. When you first started seeing these numbers come in, and now that we've done kind of the analysis on them, what was your gut reaction when you first saw, some of these pretty big numbers and some pretty clear headlines out of them?
Yeah, I was surprised, honestly. I think it's just the early part of the trend, and like if you think of that like innovation diffusion curve, the numbers that we're seeing from the survey, it's not like they're going to go down. It's just that these people are early, and it's because physicians all want to feel very much like we're right in the middle of the bell curve. Like there's a phrase. One of my old attendings once taught me, shout out Dr. Andy Leifer, who's now retired. Andy said, well, you don't want to be the first person to be using a medicine or a drug, but you also don't want to be the last person either, right? There are some risks from trying new things, but there's also some risks from not changing the way you practice and improving the way you practice and coming up, reading literature and adopting that in your workflow too. So I kind of view that exact same thing about AI is you don't want to be the first person to use AI, but you also don't want to be the last either.
We said two-thirds of physicians are using it daily, but we also saw like 81% are dissatisfied with how their organizations are deploying it. So back to this kind of like, it seems like physicians want to tend to ask for permission rather than asking after the fact. So this to me seems a little bit contradictory, right? Like they are using it, but they don't really like how they're being given permission to use it. So what do you think is actually going on here with those set of numbers?
Well, first, physicians like to be in control of everything. We are control freaks to some degree. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but we're also responsible for we have like large responsibilities for our patients' lives and their outcomes and stuff like that too. So there's a reason we like to be in control. I think physicians want to move faster and try out new stuff, especially when they see probably like ChatGPT and other tools being helpful in their daily lives and see it in the media every freaking day. So the idea that like I hear about this technology in society, maybe I'm using it with my personal life or my family or planning a trip or something like that, and I can't use it the way I want to use it when I in my work life, and maybe other people in other industries are using it for their work life. I think that's where this comes from.
On that note, back to this kind of autonomy and control. Again, the numbers show like three-quarters of people said that they have no influence on which AI tools their organizations are adopting.
Yeah.
But when they actually do get to choose, it's like overwhelmingly positive or at least neutral
Right.
reactions to the tools. When you're talking with colleagues, when you're working with a big system inside of Kaiser, how are you thinking about that? Again, this probably is not surprising. Does this kind of give physicians more firepower to say like, hey, invite us in and like we'll actually
Mm.
be happy with these tools?
Physicians want a seat at the AI table to, like, I think they want to be heard. I don't think any physician's going to say that, like, this, the one cardiologist or the pediatrician should be the one that decides which tool everybody else uses. It's kind of like, I prefer Google Docs to Microsoft Word, but that's not always an option in an organization or a company that you're a part of, and sometimes it is. So I feel like there's some appropriate amount of tension there. I think the physician also would want a tool that has been like vetted or tested or works with their population. And I think the messaging is important to communicate that clearly, but you can probably, physicians are not all, we're fairly rational actors, I think, most of the time. Like, if you say, yeah, sorry, you can't use a Mac, you have to use a PC, and then you explain why, I think a physician would say, oh, okay. In the same way that you could say, like, hey, we decided to use Microsoft Copilot instead of ChatGPT or something like that.
And, I know you've been part of technology rollouts probably as like someone that helped make a decision or, and then you've been given some of these tools or, they've been kind of thrown upon you and maybe not, your to your point, your first choice. You don't really love Microsoft Word, but everyone kind of just gets used to using it. When we asked about fears from physicians, we thought maybe it was going to be about like AI replacing them or,
Right.
patients. And actually the number one thing was that their fear was AI ending up in the hands of payers and administrators.
Yeah.
And, we pulled out this one quote. It said, the most sophisticated AI will end up controlled by third-party payers and bureaucracy, not physicians, right? And that was
Yeah.
their biggest fear. Y- One, like, is that just a valid fear that doctors should have right now?
Yeah, I think so. All technologies are arguably neutral, Chad. I will say that. AI is a technology. I frequently I love this quote about, you create the ship, you create the shipwreck, right? When you create electricity, you have now a new risk. Someone can get electrocuted. You didn't used to be able to get electrocuted. AI is a neutral technology, and AI in particular will do whatever its master tells it to do to some degree. If a payer builds an AI and says, yeah, you have to use this one, yeah, physicians are probably going to be a little skeptical of which side the AI is on. I was speaking to this med group, a hospitalist asked me, well, so is the AI going to make there be more patients that I'm admitting to the hospital or fewer patients? Like, which way is it going to go? And I said, well, it could go either way. I I think that physicians are in the unique position of, I think, hopefully being less biased. We've taken this Hippocratic Oath thing, and certainly I don't want to claim like that physicians are angelic saints and perfect either. But like, when you compare that to a payer or a health system that has a very hard financial um, benefit that's arguably attached to getting care or not getting care, right? Getting admitted to the hospital or not getting admitted to the hospital. I think the patient and the physician feel way closer to what the quote right answer is than, you know, you could say there's going to be a health system bot that's going to say, yeah, admit them to the hospital, but they have an incentive because they can collect money from the insurance company. And the insurance company bot's going to say, no, that doesn't meet our criteria for admission to the hospital. And they're going to disagree and say the opposite. But I think the clinician and certainly the patient are like that kind of unit combined are hopefully closer to the right answer than a bot made by a payer or a health system. I think I don't actually know. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Abridge. We all feel the weight of clinical documentation that follows us home and chips away at our personal time. With a bridge, clinicians can change that. A bridge drafts a structured, clinically useful note at the point of conversation, all seamlessly integrated into Epic and customizable to your specialty while you review and finalize every word. Clinicians have reported significantly less after-hours charting, improved satisfaction, and dramatically lower burnout. Let technology support your day instead of interrupting it. Visit abridge.com to learn how you can focus more on patient care and less on paperwork. Let's put the care back in clinical care. A quick word about today's sponsor, Evidently. Their platform turns an ocean of fragmented clinical data into concise, actionable insights. Chart summaries, note drafting, denial appeal support, HCC capture, so you spend time caring, not chasing. A transplant surgeon at a large academic medical center recently took transplant referral review from 2 hours to 20 minutes with AI-assisted chart review from Evidently. Physicians deserve workflows that improve accuracy, reduce exhausting chart biopsy, and help us practice at the top of our license. If you want to see how this might work in your hospital or your department, go to evidently.com. That's evidently.com to get started today.
Would you rather have a tool that was kind of hoisted upon you by an administrator or, by this kind of third party, or no tool at all and kind of continue to have to do these things like going rogue and using it on the sly?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the workflow, Chad. There are so many things that a physician does through any clinical day, right? If you were going to propose, hey, this third party's offering you a tool that'll fill out all your paperwork, then yeah, I'm going to totally choose that tool over no tool at all. If it's this tool is going to help decide if a patient should be admitted to the hospital, maybe I don't want that tool at all. And that's for a couple reasons. One is certainly the risk of the bias from the tool, right? But then the other one is like, if I'm ultimately still responsible medical legally for the patient as well, then how does that tool help me?
So let me just jump in there because we did have one emergency physician wrote in the comments, litigation related to AI is inevitable, either because we use it and it is wrong or because we didn't use it at all. You're constantly making high stake decisions all the time when you're working in the ER. Does liability concern you kind of is it something that you're thinking about as these things are rolling out? And should the liability concern keep you from using AI, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Federation of State Medical Boards, this was probably maybe January of 2024. This is a document that's probably almost 2 years old now. That their position at the time was that we don't care what tool a physician uses. The physician is ultimately responsible, full stop. And if that is the case, then, and I agree, if that's the case and that's the way it works its way through the courts and that's what happens, then physicians will adopt AI tools at a certain rate and will not adopt others.
So as long as you can override it, you can hit the eject button, whatever it is, right? You think that then that's kind of the key is like, we know it's right most of the time, but my instinct, all of my education tells me this is just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other alternative is like a shared decision making model, right? Like, say you're my patient in the ER, Chad, and we run some magical AI model on you, not magical, some AI model on you, and I say, I don't know, Chad, there's just something that worries me about your presentation. I know your labs look good. I know your vital signs look good. I know you're feeling better, but I don't know. There's just something that I'm kind of worried about you because of your story, right? It's just your history. Like everything else, and this is not uncommon at all in the ER, right? Like the most common example of this would be, say you came in to the ER and you came in because you just face planted, right? You were walking your dog and you've broken a bunch of bones in your face and you passed out and you've never passed out before. All your tests are normal. Still, that history is so concerning that your heart stopped, essentially, is what we're worried happened. And most of the time, still, it wasn't that your heart stopped, but sometimes it is. And so you could imagine if the AI model says, we think Chad's fine, he can go home. If I, as the doctor, say, I don't know, Chad, your story is so concerning. Every time I see somebody that face plants, there's like a 20% chance that they have a heart arrhythmia that could go home and kill them. And I think we should monitor you for a day and, just see if this is going to happen again in the next 24 hours. Um, like I could present that data to you and you and I could discuss it and say, hey, this model thinks you're fine. I'm still have some concern. How are you feeling about this? I think that's the best way of practicing medicine when there's uncertainty involved. You can imagine if if I'm wrong and you do have some, God forbid, you do have some serious heart problem, but the AI model said, yeah, Chad was fine to be discharged, and you have a bad outcome and something, and if I'm still ultimately responsible, why would I ever listen to that AI model? It doesn't help me.
What we've been talking about around like clinical decision making and support jives again with some of the numbers that we're seeing, which is again like 2/3 of people said that with all the things that they want help with from AI, they wanted documentation and administrative relief,
Yeah,
and like 43% actually said clinical decision support. But I feel like the decision support is kind of like where the headlines are. It's like where the
totally. Yeah,
sexy, you're in San Francisco. So
yeah,
like why the mismatch? Is it just that
sure.
like again, they don't trust it? Do we not think the technology is there? Or is it just like the administrative burden is so much that I just need that done before anything else?
I have a take on this that I think probably will not resonate with some patients, but I generally think that medical education, training, residency, fellowship is really, really good in the United States. And so I think from the physician side, physicians maybe think like, we don't need help all the time for clinical decision support. Sometimes we do. And I think physicians would say that we know our boundaries. Like I know when I need to look something up. I think some patients would say that that's, way oversimplifying things and that they've had experiences where doctors missed something or doctors weren't very good at working things up. And so I think that way they, some people might disagree with me there. If you take a cardiologist, most of the things a cardiologist is going to see a patient for, they have seen hundreds or thousands of examples in their medical training and then in their career. If they've been attending for 5 to 10 years, like a cardiologist seeing a patient for palpitations or for chest pain or for congestive heart failure, they have probably seen thousands of those cases. And they rightfully think, yeah, I probably don't need help with this run of the mill, 30 something year old or 40 something year old with palpitations. I know what tests I need to order. I know how to speak with them about it. I know what the differential diagnosis, I know what the list of conditions that could be. And so that's why I think the kind of the demand for decision support was not as high in our survey.
So as a non-physician, this to me sounds like maybe the same reactions that doctors had 20 years ago when moving to like EMRs, where they're just like,
Sure.
I just want to write a script, or I just want like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
filling it out. I don't like, I've got years of experience. I don't need to like check all these boxes and make all these notes. Like, is that kind of the same? And is it just like, this is inevitable, they're going to have to get over it? Or is there something significantly different about the implementation of this technology maybe than like the previous generations?
I mean, Chad, one of the reasons I speak out about this stuff so frequently and I write constantly and think about this stuff, every waking hour of the day is because of the EHR rollout, right? Like, that I won't bore you with too much history, but like there's this thing called the High Tech Act, and they essentially incentivized and then penalized hospitals who did or did not adopt electronic health records. And so, because there are billions of dollars at stake, lots of hospitals said, "Oh, great, we would love $1 billion." So they adopt. What do you know? They adopted electronic health records. The challenge, I think, looking back, is that the EHR tools were not necessarily designed with the end user in mind, right? They were not designed to make a nurse have a delightful time using the electronic health record. similarly with a social worker, a pharmacist, a doctor, that was not the primary goal because that's not what the law said. The law had these meaningful use criteria that, required that the EHR did these kind of regulatory check boxes to check off for safety and for good reasons. But, you know, um, reaching 80% usability ratings by your end users was not one of those meaningful use criteria. And in the same way, the parallel I see there is like um, AI will get adopted to us, not with us, um, unless we are actively speaking about it and speaking our minds and saying how we kind of need this stuff to work.
Well, let me just jump in, right? Because I'll put on my tinfoil hat
Yeah.
following this and AI and reading what you've read and working with you over the last year. I think there is a non-zero chance, right, that OpenAI could come in and just say, we will subsidize Medicare for the next decade if it
Mm.
means that every Medicare hospital implements OpenAI and ChatGPT, right?
Oh,
Like
sure.
that has to be like a possibility, right? Even unlikely. I don't
I mean,
know.
I think if some company or conglomerate of companies were to say, like, we think everybody should use this model within healthcare, and they've got some data behind it, and it's validated and whatever, and they're gonna like own some of the risk. I mean, if I'm Satya Nadella from Microsoft or I'm Sam Altman, like if I were to say like, oh hey, Microsoft is gonna own and indemnify 20% of the risk of the doctors using AI across the world, to me, I I think every health system would be like, "Hey, what are these Microsoft models, and can we start using them?"
So continuing like on some of these like big ideas, we did ask physicians what their dream tool is before we go over maybe like some of the ones that we saw. Like what's yours?
Yeah, my dream tool is like, it's got 2. One's like an active version and one's a passive version. Now, I'm obviously, gonna I'm wearing my ER doctor hat right now, but, like, there's an active version where I actively have a question, right? I know that I don't know something, and I can actively go use that tool to find out more information. And it's smart enough to know the patient's context and know the patient's past medical history and enough about them that it's, able to customize and provide me with really good information for the patient. And then there's a passive version that is kind of watching me in hopefully a non-creepy way. It's like a really good attending colleague that's kind of nudging you occasionally or whispering in your ear like, "Hey, Graham, you might want to think about, it looks like you're going down the path of appendicitis. You might want to think about ovarian torsion in this person." And it's not telling me what to do, but it's acting as a trusted colleague in the same way that, like, when you're a senior resident at many residencies, the attendings kind of let you do mostly what you want to do because you're experienced enough. You're about to be an attending in 3 months or something, right? And so you've worked with these attendings for years that they trust you and you trust them. And occasionally the attending will run through one of the plans and they say, "Hey, you might want to order a this test on that person. I'm not sure if you think you might be wrong on this one." Like it's that type of like oversight without forcing you that can help me not make mistakes, but also helps me kind of stay engaged and activated.
Great ideas, like big ideas. We got a lot of things like eliminate the fax machine, like
Yeah,
handle my
check.
inbox, like
I
let me
love
stay
that.
logged
Love it.
in.
Yeah,
Like those just seem like these really solvable, unsexy problems from a
totally. Yeah.
lot of people. So does that surprise you that like the normie doctor, like that's the things that they're focused on?
No, the fax machine is a massive headache for everybody in healthcare. Since HIPAA in 1996 said it was, an approved secure way to transfer data, and we haven't touched that. We haven't touched that law in what is that? Almost 30 years. Dear God. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Imagine, Chad, you're a podcast producer. I would imagine almost all of your day is spent on a computer and a screen. But then imagine like a couple times a day, you're given 75 pieces of paper that you have to sort through in order to do your job. So that, yeah, that's why the fax one is there. Yeah, I think it's the little uh, death by a thousand paper cuts that just like makes the job frustrating in ways that, like, to an end user physician, seem like solvable. Like, you know, again, it's that feeling of like you're doing this to me, not for me or not with me.
Those are all kind of the ideas of like what I wish I had in terms of the tools that doctors are actually using, right? The number one head and shoulders above was open evidence,
Yep.
then ChatGPT, again, probably because people are using it in their personal lives and that,
Sure. Yeah.
and then actually a bridge for documentation. We just talked to Shiv. It was a great
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
You've used all of these tools.
Yeah.
So on open evidence, what have they gotten right so quickly that is kind of explaining their dominance right now?
Open Evidence has done a really good job of eliminating uh, barriers to using the tool, right? Like, you know, you have to enter your NPI and then I think you make an account. Um, and then you can just start using the tool. I've said this for 20 years, like when I made MD Calc, any barrier to a physician being able to use a tool is going to slow down their adoption or stop their adoption of said tool, right? Like, even if it's a username and password, even if it's you have to two-factor authenticate something, you know, like, uh, physicians have so many things to do per day that, removing a single barrier, or an extra screen, an extra click, is critical.
So my wife is an infusion pharmacist,
Yeah.
not a technology I mean, whatever I bring home, but, I turned her on to open evidence and it kinda was the front door for AI for her, right? And now she's tried out other tools, but it's interesting you say that kind of these hurdles, which is she had actually never gotten an NPI, like, she could have gotten an NPI in, but never had
Oh,
any
sure. Yeah.
need to
Oh,
because
really?
for
I thought pharmacists had to have one, but, yeah, I guess if they're not maybe they don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like here,
Interesting.
yeah, in New Jersey, like she just never had a need for one, but then started hitting the limit on open evidence of like the free usage.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
like went and did all the stuff. Like it wasn't a huge hurdle. But it
Sure.
was really interesting that like the barrier was so low that she then jumped over another barrier to
Interesting.
continue
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah.
So
That's
again,
fascinating. Yeah.
not surprising to me. When we asked what they wanted, actually, aside from kind of those common things, the most common answer was, "I don't know what's available."
Yeah. Yeah.
And, even on Offcall, and then while we've been doing, we're looking at, like, topics we should doing, we see a whole lot of search data for just things like, what are the top-rated AI platforms for improving patient doctor? What is the best AI clinical documentation software? Give me the top AI tools. As you think about adoption and education about even just what's out there, does there need to be like a consumer reports
Mm.
for healthcare AI? Like, is there some independent resource that can call bullshit on a lot of this vaporware that we're seeing
Sure.
promise? Like, how do you think that has to play out to really drive adoption?
Yeah, you know, there's a great, company that I've no affiliation with besides liking them, called Elion, Elion Health. They're trying to, kind of categorize and I think review every health tech company, and obviously a lot of that is AI, but not all of it. I think they're a good resource to see what's out there. You know, it was interesting, Chad. Like, even just talking with the off call team about AI, like I had to kind of explain to everybody these AI tools aren't just like an app I can download on my phone, or they're not a website that I can just like open up and make an account and start using with my patients. Having physicians have more opportunities to pilot and try out these tools, a sandbox with, uh, you know, a real EHR or a simulated EHR, but with simulated digital twin patient data, would be really helpful. Demos only get you so far. and this isn't specific to AI tools, this is all health technology. One of the criticisms I have of Epic is Epic does really good demos, and demos of real products they've built, real features, real tools. But then when you import them into the real world of real patients, their demo that looked really great when the patient had three medical problems and they were on two medicines, the product doesn't work as well when the real patient that I'm seeing has 30 medical problems and they're on 50 medicines. And they've had 17 emails back and forth to their doctor in the past 2 days. I've not seen anything that works as well as just like just kicking the tires with real patient data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to be
Yeah.
hands-on. Like, you need to be hands-on. I mean, and to me, it sounds like it. I remember one of the earlier episodes we did, you talked about learning. It was like, like ultrasound-assisted surgery or,
Or
for
like a
like
fascia, like a nerve block.
yeah, the nerve block. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you were like, so I imagine it's almost the same way. And like we think about it, of course, the only way you're going to learn to do that, like you're not going to learn that by like clicking a mouse on like a simulated patient. You're only going to learn that. It's just we've gotten used to the idea that like, well, everyone else has an app on their phone. Why can't doctors have that?
Yeah. The best place to learn, a skill in medicine, or a procedural thing like a fascia iliaca block or a nerve block, is like you can do it in a cadaver lab. There are simulated models that have the same layout of tubes, like veins and arteries and nerves and stuff like that. So you can practice on those. And that's the same way, like, there would be no better place to try out an AI tool than with like, take 10 of your patients, de-identify them, but use all the real medical problems and all the other kind of cruft and junk that comes with practicing real medicine, and then try out the tool with that.
It's interesting. Like you talked about, like not coming from the health side, but like the marketing and comm side, like my world. In marketing, right? There's all kinds of you can like hash emails and match them against these
Sure.
like big data sets or credit card data, right? Where it's all like hidden and obfuscated. It feels like health data might have to take that same type of thing where a bunch of big, whether it's the insurance companies or a big healthcare systems, are going to have to do the same type of thing to actually get doctors to trust these tools.
Yeah. I completely agree.
We've got a couple of quotes here. Let me just get
Sure.
like your immediate reactions to some of these.
Yeah.
Um, Hospital keeps saying, quote, "We're evaluating AI tools for the past 2 years and nothing happens."
I think every hospital is probably doing that. I think that's one of the challenges of the hospitals, to some degree, viewing each other as competitors and not wanting to work together. Because you can imagine that every hospital is doing the same thing, and imagine all the work and all the thousands of hours of everybody's IT and clinical leaders and all this stuff doing the exact same work. I think that's one of the challenges. And then on the nothing happens piece, I think that's a failure of leadership. Like if the physician, if it really feels like there's an operational need, an operational impact, and the hospital just keeps saying, "Oh, we're still looking," um, to me that sounds like whoever submitted that comment, it's not the communication has not gotten to them about why either this hasn't happened yet, they're not ready, they don't feel like it's safe. Like, that's a communication and a leadership problem, I think.
What about someone else that said they're so worried about HIPAA that they won't approve anything? Yeah, is that a real concern, or is that just like
Sure.
something where they can hide behind it and kick the can down the road?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably six of one, half dozen of the other. I mean, HIPAA has large fines. We see more and more HIPAA violations and security risks at hospitals. I mean, hospitals are now actively targeted for phishing scams and Bitcoin, ransomware attacks. HIPAA certainly can be a scapegoat sometimes, but I don't think those fears aren't like unwarranted. And I think some physicians don't have sufficient AI education to really understand. Like, if you type in PHI into chatgpt.com, that information is forever a part of OpenAI's database. There's no way to get it back. There's no way even if you delete the chat, that information is gone. It's in there somewhere. I think there are absolutely safe ways to deploy generative predictive AI models that does not involve HIPAA risks. I'll just give you a couple. You can run models locally. You can sign a BAA with Microsoft or ChatGPT, or I think a lot of companies will sign, business associate agreements, which is the HIPAA requirement for data security, and you can do a data audit. Like there's absolutely ways to use this stuff. Yeah, yeah,
So there's
but
ways
you also have
around
to
it.
be
Yeah.
smart about it.
Gotcha.
You can't be fast and loose with people's privacy. That's not acceptable either.
And then what about this last one? We can afford new conference rooms, but not abridged licenses.
Oh, damn. I think Abridge and all the AI scribe companies are trying to kind of calculate and tell their story of the ROI. And I agree with the AI scribe companies. I think there is tremendous ROI there. Again, I think that's a failure of leadership to communicate or understand why the physician would be comparing those two and think that it's a problem that you're funding one and not the other.
All right, so there's a ton more data in this. The release that
Yeah,
we're about to do. People can click on we'll have a link in the show notes, click on the article in
cool.
Offcall. So let's just kind of, your usual rapid fire. Given everything that we've heard, all these numbers, what's your honest assessment on the current state of AI in medicine right now?
I mean, based on these numbers, I think it's being used more than physicians are talking about publicly, and it's only going to continue to grow.
What's the thing that the media is getting wrong when they're talking about AI in general, but also AI in medicine?
I think that doctors are generally cautiously optimistic about it, but we are also unwilling to risk our patients' safety for it.
And then, let's just talk to some of the folks that we know are listening. So tell healthcare executives, one thing that they're like, you need to know this based on the survey data.
Oh, I think that your physicians don't feel like they have a seat at the table, that they don't feel like they're heard.
And then on the flip side, if you could tell all the AI companies themselves, the ones that are building tools for physicians, what do they need to understand from this data set?
Understand that physicians are not all the same people. We don't do the same work. And so if you've talked to a pediatrician, you have no idea what a cardiologist has done, or a pathologist, or an ER doctor, or a primary care doctor. And so, if you say you've built an AI solution for physicians, unless it's something very general that we all do, like write notes, you haven't built a physician tool. You've built a tool for a certain group of people with certain tasks.
Awesome. And we've heard that from a lot of the guests, that we've had on recently as well. And then last, the biggest group that we know is listening right now, other physicians, your colleagues, the folks that you see every day, what's the headline for them?
I think the headline is, it's a really exciting time to be in medicine. And I think the future is really bright if we are all active participants in this. But that requires us to kind of go above and beyond and be vocal and share our experiences with AI and how we want it to work and what would be helpful to us and what wouldn't be helpful.
Amazing. Dr. Graham Walker, thank you so much for being a guest on How I Doctor today.
On my own podcast.
Any last words?
Thank you for having me,
Yeah.
Chad. Yeah, no, I'm excited for the future, and I really believe that AI can be tremendously helpful if we deploy it in a safe and ethical and accurate way. Thanks for joining me today. For interviews with physicians creating meaningful change, check out offcall.com/podcast. You can find How I Doctor on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have new episodes weekly. This has been and continues to be Dr. Graham Walker. Stay well, stay inspired, and practice with purpose.